The champagne glass trembled in my hand as I read the words again, each letter burning into my retinas like acid. Dear Mom, I think it's best for the company's reputation if people believe I built this business independently. Please consider this my formal request for you to step down as co-founder effective immediately. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The celebration continued around me. Our employees, our clients, everyone toasting the first anniversary of Jenkins and Associates Marketing Solutions, our company, the company I had built from the ground up with my own retirement savings, my own contacts, my own sleepless nights, the company where Wendy had started as my assistant, learning everything from client management to contract negotiations at my kitchen table. Mom, Wendy's voice cut through the noise, artificially bright. Did you get a chance to look at that paperwork I gave you? I looked up at my daughter, my 42-year-old daughter, who had never held a job for more than 2 years before this, who had called me crying 3 years ago because she couldn't make her mortgage payment. The same daughter who was now wearing a $3,000 suit and addressing our biggest client as if she'd single-handedly secured the Miller Industries account. I read it. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Wendy's smile faltered slightly. She glanced around the room, noting the proximity of Tom Miller, our most lucrative client. Maybe we could discuss this later. Tonight's about celebrating. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was being erased from my own success story. At the party meant to commemorate it, of course, sweetheart. I set down my champagne, the bubbles suddenly tasting flat. We wouldn't want to disturb the celebration. The rest of the evening passed in a haze of forced smiles and hollow congratulations. I watched Wendy work the room, introducing herself as the founder to people who had watched me present the business plan at our launch meeting. I listened to her explain strategies I had developed using terminology I had taught her, claiming credit for relationships I had spent decades building. Mrs. Palmer, from Harmony Industries, approached me near the dessert table. Vicky, you must be so proud. Wendy told me how she came up with the integrated marketing approach all by herself. Such innovation for someone so young. The knife twisted deeper. The integrated marketing approach had been my thesis project in graduate school 25 years ago, when Wendy was still learning to tie her shoes. She's certainly resourceful. I managed. By the time the last guest left, I was exhausted from the performance. Wendy lingered as I collected empty glasses and straightened chairs in our modest office space. So, she said, perching on the edge of my desk, about that conversation. I continued cleaning, not trusting myself to look at her directly. What conversation would that be? Mom, don't be dramatic. You know this makes sense. I'm younger, more relatable to our target demographic. The clients connect with me better. The clients connect with you because I introduced you to them. Wendy's expression hardened slightly. That's not entirely fair. I've brought in plenty of new business on my own. I finally turned to face her, resignation letter still clutched in my hand. Name one client you've brought in without using my contacts or my reputation. The silence stretched between us. Wendy's jaw tightened, a tell she'd had since childhood when caught in a lie. This isn't about keeping score, Mom. This is about what's best for the business. And honestly, she stood up, smoothing her skirt. Having people think you built this, at your age, it doesn't exactly scream innovation and forward thinking. At my age, I was 58 years old. I had more energy and sharper business instincts than people half my age. But in Wendy's narrative, I was the aging figurehead who needed to step aside for the bright young talent. I folded the letter fully, creasing it along the lines where her signature sat like a small betrayal, and my financial investment, my client relationships, my aging expertise. You'll still be involved, of course, as a consultant. We'll work out the financial details later. Translation: she had no intention of compensating me fairly for the business I had built, funded, and sustained. I walked to the window overlooking the parking lot. Wendy's BMW sat next to my 10-year-old Honda Civic. The BMW I had co-signed for when her credit was shot from her previous business failures. The BMW she now drove to meetings with clients who thought she was a self-made entrepreneur. I need some time to think about this, I said finally. Wendy's relief was palpable. Of course. Take all the time you need, but maybe don't mention anything to the team yet. I'd like to handle the transition carefully. After she left, I sat alone in our office, my office, surrounded by the detritus of celebration. The banner reading Jenkins and Associates, 1 year strong, hung crooked above my desk. Wendy had ordered it, naturally leaving off the and Associates part in her verbal references throughout the evening. I opened my laptop and began scrolling through our client files, our financial records, our contracts, everything we had built together, and everything she now wanted to claim as her own. The Miller Industries account alone was worth $180,000 annually. Secured through my college roommate's introduction to Tom Miller's wife, the Harmony Industries contract came through Mrs. Palmer, whom I had met at a business networking event. Before Wendy even knew what marketing meant, my phone buzzed with a text from my sister Janet. Saw the photos from tonight on Wendy's Instagram. So proud of her. Building a business from scratch at her age is incredible. From scratch, I stared at the words until they blurred. That night, I lay awake, running numbers in my head. If I signed the resignation letter, I would lose not just my title, but my leverage. Wendy would control the narrative, the client relationships, and ultimately the value of everything I had put into the business. The retirement savings I had invested, my nest egg, my security, would become her success story. But if I fought her, what then? A legal battle with my own daughter, public exposure of our family conflict, the potential destruction of the business we had both worked to build. The ceiling fan creaked overhead, the same rhythm as the questions spinning through my mind. When had my daughter learned to smile while stabbing me in the back? When had I become expendable in the life I had created? As dawn broke through my bedroom window, I realized that the champagne taste in my mouth had been replaced by something metallic, something that tasted like the end of one story and the beginning of another. I reached for my phone and typed a message to Wendy. We need to talk. My office tomorrow morning, 9 sharp. But even as I hit send, I knew that by the time she read it, I would already be 3 steps ahead of whatever she thought she had planned. Wendy arrived at 9:15. Her usual 15 minutes of casual disrespect, disguised as being fashionably late. She carried her signature vanilla latte and wore the confidence of someone who believed the hard conversation was behind her. Morning, Mom. She settled into the chair across from my desk with practiced ease. I hope you've had time to process everything. I know it was a lot to take in at the party. I had been awake since 4 a.m., processing everything. Indeed, processing 25 years of building my reputation in this industry. Processing the $47,000 of my retirement savings that had funded our startup costs, processing the countless nights I'd spent crafting proposals while Wendy slept soundly in her suburban home. I've been thinking, I said, not offering her the usual pleasantries about your resignation letter. Wendy's shoulders relaxed slightly. Good. I was hoping you'd see the logic in it. I've already drafted a press release announcing the transition. Very respectful, of course. It positions you as the wise mentor passing the torch to the next generation. The wise mentor, as if I were some elderly sage retreating to a rocking chair instead of a woman in her prime, being pushed aside by her ungrateful child. Tell me something, Wendy. Do you remember when you called me 3 years ago crying because Brian had left and taken half your savings account? Wendy's latte paused halfway to her lips. I don't see how that's relevant. You were living in a 1-bedroom apartment, working part-time at that boutique, and you couldn't make your car payment. Do you remember what I told you? The color began to drain from Wendy's cheeks. She remembered. Of course, she remembered. Told you, I continued, my voice steady as a surgeon's blade, that I had been thinking about starting a consulting business, something to keep me busy in my retirement years. And you said, what was it exactly? Mom, I'd love to help. I need a fresh start. And I've always been good with people. That's what happened. We started the business together. No, sweetheart, I started the business. You helped. There's a difference. Wendy sat down her cup with more force than necessary. Okay, fine. Yes, you had the initial idea, but I've contributed just as much. With what money? The question hung in the air like smoke. Wendy's mouth opened and closed, but no sound emerged, because according to our business account records, which I reviewed last night, your total financial contribution to Jenkins and Associates has been exactly 0. Would you like to see the bank statements? I slid a folder across the desk. Wendy stared at it as if it might bite her. The startup costs, $47,000 from my retirement account, the office lease deposit, my signature, my credit check, the business insurance, the marketing materials, the website development, the legal fees for incorporation. All me. Your contribution has been. I paused, tapping my pen against the desk. What would you say your contribution has been? I bring clients in. I manage relationships. I handle the creative side using my contacts, following processes I developed, implementing strategies I taught you. Wendy's face was flushed now, a mottled red that reminded me of her childhood tantrums. This is ridiculous. I'm not some incompetent child. I've worked just as hard as you have you? I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. The screen displayed our time tracking software, which I had quietly been monitoring for the past 6 months. This shows your billable hours versus mine. Would you like to guess who's been working more than 40 hours a week consistently and who's been averaging 28? Wendy glanced at the screen and looked away quickly. Hours don't matter. It's about results. You're absolutely right. So, let's talk about results. I pulled out another document. Here's a list of every client we've acquired in the past year, along with the source of the initial contact. Shall we go through it together? Mom, stop. This is Miller Industries. Contact. Through my college roommate, Hazel Miller. Harmony Ministries, Mrs. Palmer, whom I met at the downtown business mixer. Riverside Medical Group, Dr. Patterson, my former neighbor. Bennett Financial. Enough. Wendy's voice cracked slightly. What do you want from me? What do you want from me? As if I were the one making unreasonable demands. As if I were the one trying to steal credit for someone else's work. I want you to explain to me how you justify asking me to sign away my rights to a business I created, funded, and built, so that you can pretend you did it all yourself. Wendy stared at her hands for a long moment. When she looked up, her expression had shifted into something I recognized from her teenage years. Wounded defiance, mixed with calculation. People expect businesses to be run by younger people. It's just reality. And honestly, Mom, some of the clients have mentioned that they'd prefer working with someone who understands modern marketing trends. Which clients? That's not the point. It's exactly the point. Name one client who has expressed dissatisfaction with my work or my age. Silence. You can't because there aren't any. What there are, however, are clients who assume you're in charge. Because you're the one who answers the phone and schedules meetings while I'm in the back office doing the actual work. Wendy's jaw tightened. That's not fair. Fair. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about the Miller Industries presentation. The one you delivered last month. The one that secured us their expanded contract. What about it? The one I spent 3 weeks preparing while you were on vacation in Cancun. The one where you presented my market analysis, my campaign strategies, and my budget projections as your own work. Wendy's face went pale. You said I could present it. I said you could deliver the presentation because Tom Miller specifically requested that you be there. I never said you could take credit for creating it. I didn't, Wendy. My voice cut through her protest like a blade. I was in that room. I heard you tell Tom Miller that you'd spent weeks developing this innovative approach and that you were excited to implement your vision for his company. The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken resentments and accumulating lies. Wendy's breathing had become shallow, and I could see the pulse jumping in her throat. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Finally, you're going to withdraw that resignation letter. We're going to sit down with our lawyer and restructure this partnership to accurately reflect both our contributions and our ownership stakes. And you're going to stop introducing yourself as the founder of this company. And if I don't, the question I'd been waiting for. I smiled for the first time since she'd walked in. Then I'll be withdrawing my financial backing, my client relationships, and my expertise. I'll be starting my own firm, Jenkins Marketing Solutions, without the associates. Wendy's confidence crumbled visibly. You can't do that. We have contracts, obligations. We have contracts that I negotiated with clients who trust me personally. Do you think Tom Miller signed with Jenkins and Associates because of our impressive office space or because he's known me for 15 years through his wife? That's extortion. No, sweetheart, that's business. You want to play in the adult world. You need to understand that actions have consequences. Wendy stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. I need to think about this. Of course, you do. Take all the time you need. But Wendy, I waited until she turned back to face me. While you're thinking, you might want to consider what happens to someone who tries to build a house on a foundation that doesn't belong to them. After she left, I sat alone in my office, my hands surprisingly steady as I reached for my phone. The first call was to Hazel Miller. not about business, but to catch up on old times. The second was to Mrs. Palmer to discuss her daughter's upcoming wedding. The third was to Dr. Patterson to ask about his new practice location. By the time I finished my calls, I had confirmed what I already knew. My relationships were mine, my reputation was mine, and my daughter was about to learn the difference between building something and simply taking credit for it. The afternoon sun slanted through my office window, casting long shadows across Wendy's empty chair. For the first time in months, I felt the familiar thrill of strategic planning, not for a client's campaign, but for my own future. Whatever Wendy decided, I would be ready. 3 days passed without a word from Wendy. 3 days of her empty office, echoing with unfinished conversations and abandoned coffee cups. I continued our work as if nothing had changed, responding to client emails, reviewing campaign proposals, maintaining the careful relationships that kept our business alive. On Thursday morning, she finally returned. "I've been thinking," she announced, settling into her chair with renewed determination. "And I've discussed this with Brian." Brian, her ex-husband who had crawled back into her life 6 months ago, drawn like a moth to the success he thought she had created. The same Brian who had left her financially devastated and now whispered poison in her ear about maximizing her potential. How lovely! And what wisdom did Brian share? Wendy missed the ice in my tone entirely. "He thinks you're being unreasonable, that you're trying to hold me back because you're threatened by my success." I set down my pen with deliberate care. "Your success?" "Yes, my success." Brian pointed out that I'm the face of this company now. The clients prefer working with me. I'm the one who brings the energy and innovation. And Brian would know about business success. How exactly? Through his failed restaurant, his bankruptcy, or perhaps through his expertise in abandoning responsibilities when things get difficult. Wendy's cheeks flushed. "That's not fair. Brian has learned from his mistakes. He's been helping me see this situation more clearly." "I see. And what clarity has he provided?" "That you're holding me back, that I need to establish my independence and take control of my own career path." Wendy straightened in her chair, channeling what she clearly thought was executive presence. "So, I've made my decision. I'm not withdrawing the resignation letter. In fact, I think it's better if we make a clean break." The words hung in the air like a blade suspended by a thread. I felt something cold and final settle in my chest. Not hurt, not surprise, but a crystalline clarity that cut through 25 years of maternal instinct. A clean break. "Yes, I'll buy out your share of the business. We can get it appraised, and I'll pay you fair market value. This way, we both get what we want." I laughed. Actually laughed. The sound surprised us both. "Wendy's sweetheart, what exactly do you think you're buying?" "The business, Jenkins and Associates, the client contracts, the reputation that exists because of my relationships, the contracts that were signed because of my credibility, the expertise that took me 30 years to develop." I leaned back in my chair, studying her face. "Tell me, what happens when you call Tom Miller next week and I'm not here to answer his questions about market demographics? What happens when Mrs. Palmer needs a crisis management strategy and you don't know the difference between damage control and brand rehabilitation?" Wendy's confidence wavered slightly. "I'll figure it out. I always do. The way you figured out your boutique business, the way you figured out your freelance graphic design career, the way you figured out your marriage." The cruelty of the words surprised even me, but I felt no desire to take them back. Wendy's face went white, then red, then white again. "That's completely unfair." "Is it? Because I'm looking at a pattern here, Wendy. A pattern of you starting something with great enthusiasm, riding on other people's support and expertise, and then either failing or moving on when the work gets difficult. This is different. How? Because this time I'm not going to let you sabotage me." The accusation hit like a physical blow. I stared at my daughter, this woman I had raised, supported, invested in, believed in, and saw a stranger wearing Wendy's face. "Sabotage you? Yes, you've always done this. Whenever I start to succeed at something, you find a way to undermine it, to make it about you instead of me." I stood up slowly, my hands flat on the desk between us. "Give me one example." "The boutique. You said it was too risky, that I didn't have enough experience. You asked me for a loan of $30,000 to open a clothing store in a market you hadn't researched, selling brands you had no experience with, in a location with rent you couldn't afford. I told you to develop a business plan first. You called me unsupportive, and opened anyway with money from Brian's credit cards. 6 months later, you were bankrupt. Wendy's mouth opened and closed. That's not. You didn't start the graphic design business. You asked me to recommend you to my contacts. I suggested you build a portfolio first, maybe take some advanced courses in digital marketing. You said I was making excuses and started telling people you were fully booked when you had exactly 0 clients. I was trying to project confidence. You were lying. And when those referrals I eventually made didn't work out because you couldn't deliver what you'd promised, guess whose reputation suffered? Wendy sank back into her chair, her bravado crumbling like wet paper. And now, I continued, my voice steady as granite. You want to take the one thing I actually built from the ground up, erase my contributions, and call it your success. And when I object, you accuse me of sabotage. The office fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic. Wendy's breathing was shallow, and I could see tears gathering in her eyes, the same tears that had gotten her out of trouble as a child, that had secured her loans and second chances and clean slates throughout her adult life. I don't want to hurt you, Mom, but you will. If it serves your purposes, you'll hurt me without hesitation. You've already proven that. That's not true, is it? 3 nights ago, you handed me a resignation letter at our company's anniversary party in front of our clients, our employees, everyone we work with. You wanted to humiliate me into compliance. Wendy wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. It wasn't supposed to be humiliating. I thought you'd understand. Understand what? That my own daughter values her image more than my dignity. That she's willing to rewrite history to make herself look better. That she sees me as an obstacle to be removed rather than a partner, to be respected. It's not like that. Then tell me what it's like. Wendy, explain to me how asking me to disappear from my own success story is anything other than betrayal. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Outside the window, the world continued its ordinary business, people walking to lunch, cars navigating traffic, life proceeding normally while my relationship with my daughter collapsed in real time. I can't do this anymore, Wendy said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Do what? Be in your shadow, always be the assistant, the helper, the second in command. I'm 42 years old, Mom. I need to succeed at something on my own. There it was, the truth beneath all the justifications and manipulation. My daughter saw my success as her failure, my presence as her diminishment. So take the skills I've taught you and go build something yourself. Start your own firm. Use your own money, your own contacts, your own expertise. Succeed on your own merit. I don't have your contacts. I don't have your reputation. I don't have decades of experience. No, you don't. And you never will if you keep trying to steal other people's instead of earning your own. Wendy looked up at me with something that might have been hatred. So, that's it. You're just going to let me fail. I'm going to stop enabling you to succeed at my expense. She gathered her purse and jacket with shaking hands. Fine, I'll have my lawyer contact you about the business dissolution. Wendy. She paused at the door, not turning around. Your lawyer will find that the business assets, the client, contracts, and the intellectual property are all tied to my personal guarantees and professional certifications. Dissolving the partnership means you walk away with exactly what you brought into it, which is nothing. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and I was alone in my office. Truly alone, for the first time in 3 years. The silence should have felt empty, but instead, it felt like the moment before dawn, when the darkness is heaviest, but the light is already gathering strength on the horizon. I opened my laptop and began typing. Jenkins Marketing Solutions, 30 years of proven results. It was time to stop being someone's supporting character and start being the author of my own story. The first month alone was harder than I had anticipated, not emotionally. That wound had cauterized itself the moment Wendy chose Brian's poison over her mother's partnership. But practically, the daily operations of running a business solo required an adjustment I hadn't expected. After 3 years of shared responsibilities, I was working late on a Thursday evening, reviewing client proposals in the empty office that still smelled faintly of Wendy's vanilla perfume when my phone rang. Jenkins Marketing Solutions. Vicky, speaking. Vicky, this is Marjorie Patterson. I hope it's not too late to call. Marjorie, Dr. Patterson's daughter, whom I hadn't spoken to in nearly 5 years. The last time I'd seen her, she'd been a scattered 25-year-old bouncing between graduate programs and part-time jobs. Now 30. If my mental math was correct. Marjorie, of course not. How are you? How's your father? Dad's, well, thank you. Actually, he gave me your number. I heard through the family grapevine that you'd started your own marketing firm. I was hoping we could talk. I sat down my pen, curious. What can I help you with? Well, it's a bit complicated. Are you free for coffee tomorrow? I have a proposition that might be mutually beneficial. We met at the small cafe near my office, and I almost didn't recognize the composed woman who stood to greet me. Marjorie had traded her college uniform of jeans and oversized sweaters for a crisp blazer and confident handshake, but her eyes held the same intelligence I remembered from the sharp teenager who had challenged her father's dinner party. Guests with questions about social justice and corporate responsibility. You look wonderful, I said, settling into the booth across from her. So do you. Dad mentioned you'd been through some recent business changes. I smiled, wryly. Your father has always been tactful. Yes, I've recently transitioned to operating independently. Marjorie nodded, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. That's actually perfect timing for what I wanted to discuss. Vicky, what do you know about nonprofit marketing? Enough to know it's challenging. Limited budgets, mission-driven messaging, donor fatigue, volunteer coordination. Why? Because I've spent the last 2 years working for a disaster relief organization, and I've learned that good intentions without an effective communication strategy equals programs that can't sustain themselves. Marjorie leaned forward, her enthusiasm breaking through her professional composure. I've been developing a model for a consulting firm that specifically serves nonprofits and social enterprises. Organizations that are doing critical work but don't have the resources for traditional marketing firms. I felt a spark of interest. Go on. Here's the thing. I understand the nonprofit world, the grant cycles, the board dynamics, the volunteer management, but I don't have the business marketing expertise to scale this into something sustainable. I need someone who knows how to build client relationships, develop pricing structures that work, and create systems that can grow. And you think I might be that someone? I know you are. Dad's told me about your reputation, your track record, and frankly, after 3 decades in traditional corporate marketing, you might find it refreshing to work with organizations whose bottom line is measured in lives changed rather than profits maximized. I studied Marjorie's face, seeing echoes of the passionate idealism I remembered, but tempered now with practical experience. What kind of partnership are you envisioning? Equal partners, equal investment, equal ownership, equal decision-making, authority. I bring the nonprofit expertise and client base I've been developing. You bring the business acumen and marketing systems. We build something that serves a sector that desperately needs what we can offer. Equal partners. The phrase hit me like cool water after walking through a desert. Tell me about your client base. Marjorie pulled out a folder organized with the precision of someone who had learned to make every pitch count. I've been consulting informally with 12 organizations over the past year. Small stuff, mostly, helping them improve their donor communications, streamline their social media presence, and develop more effective fundraising campaigns. But the demand is enormous, and most of them are paying marketing firms that don't understand their unique challenges. She showed me case studies, testimonials, and financial projections that were modest but realistic. More importantly, she showed me passion grounded in practical experience, exactly what had been missing from my partnership with Wendy. What's your timeline? I asked. I'd like to launch officially in 3 months. I have enough savings to cover my share of startup costs, and I've identified office space that would work for both the collaborative nature of our work and our budget constraints. Her share of startup costs, no requests for loans, no assumptions about my funding her dreams, no expectation that I would carry the financial burden while she provided the vision. Marjorie, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Why me? You could find a marketing professional closer to your age, someone who might be more in tune with current trends and social media strategies. Because, Marjorie interrupted gently, I don't want someone who's just following trends. I want someone who understands how to build relationships that last decades, who knows the difference between a marketing gimmick and a sustainable strategy. I want someone who's proven they can create value, not just promise it. The words landed like balm on wounds I hadn't realized were still tender. Besides, Marjorie continued with a smile, I've done my homework. I talked to Mrs. Palmer about your work with Harmony Industries. I spoke with Tom Miller about the campaign you developed for his company. Your reputation isn't based on being young and trendy, it's based on being excellent. That evening, I called Marjorie with my answer. 3 weeks later, we signed the partnership agreement for Patterson-Jenkins Social Impact Marketing in the lawyer's office. Our signatures side by side on documents that spelled out our equal rights and responsibilities in language that left no room for ambiguity. The new office space was smaller than what I'd shared with Wendy, but it felt expansive in ways that had nothing to do with square footage. Marjorie had chosen a converted warehouse in the Arts District with exposed brick walls and large windows that filled the space with natural light. Our desks faced each other across a collaborative workspace that encouraged conversation rather than hierarchy. Our first major client meeting was with the Metro Youth Alliance, an organization that provided job training and mentorship for at-risk teenagers. Marjorie had been working with them informally for 6 months, helping them improve their volunteer recruitment efforts. Their biggest challenge, Marjorie explained as we prepared for the meeting, is that they're incredibly effective at what they do, but terrible at communicating that effectiveness to potential funders. They've got this amazing program that's literally changing kids' lives, but their grant applications read like grocery lists. The meeting was unlike any client interaction I'd experienced in traditional marketing. Maria Santos, the executive director, wasn't interested in brand positioning or market penetration. She wanted to know how to tell the story of 16-year-old Brian, not Wendy's Brian, thankfully, who had gone from sleeping in his car to earning his GED and landing an apprenticeship with a local electrician. We have dozens of stories like this, Maria said, pulling out a thick folder of photographs and testimonials. But when I sit down to write a grant proposal, I get so focused on outcomes and metrics that I forget to include the humanity. The funders see numbers, but they don't see the kids. I looked at Marjorie, who was taking notes with the focused attention of someone who understood that these weren't just marketing challenges, they were opportunities to amplify voices that needed to be heard. What if, I said slowly, we restructured your communication strategy around storytelling? Instead of leading with statistics, we lead with individual narratives that illustrate the broader impact. Maria's eyes lit up. Could we do that? I mean, would funders respond to that approach? People fund people, I said. They donate to causes they can visualize and connect with emotionally. The data supports the story, but the story sells the mission. Over the next 2 hours, we developed a comprehensive communication strategy that would transform how Metro Youth Alliance presented itself to the world. Marjorie handled the programmatic details with the fluency of someone who understood nonprofit operations from the inside. I managed a strategic framework and implementation timeline with the experience of someone who had spent 3 decades turning good ideas into sustainable results. As we walked to our cars after the meeting, Marjorie turned to me with a smile that reminded me why I had fallen in love with marketing in the first place. "This is what I was hoping for," she said. "This feeling that we're not just building a business, we're building something that matters." I thought about Wendy, probably struggling with client relationships she didn't understand and systems she couldn't manage. I thought about Brian, whispering advice that would lead her deeper into failure. And I realized that sometimes the greatest gift life can give you isn't the success you planned for, but the partnership you never knew you needed. "Yes," I said, unlocking my car. "It is." That night, I updated my LinkedIn profile, co-founder Patterson-Jenkins, Social Impact Marketing. For the first time in months, the title felt true. 6 months after our launch, Patterson-Jenkins Social Impact Marketing had grown beyond our most optimistic projections. We had 15 active clients, a waiting list, and a reputation that was spreading through the nonprofit community like wildfire. Marjorie's expertise in the sector, combined with my business development skills, had created something neither of us could have built alone. I was reviewing quarterly reports in our sun-filled office when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Vicky Jenkins speaking, Mom." Wendy's voice was smaller than I remembered. Stripped of the confident authority she'd worn like armor during our last conversation, I set down my pen carefully. "Hello, Wendy. I was hoping we could talk. Are you free for lunch? I know it's short notice, but I'm in your area and I thought, I'm quite busy today. What do you need?" The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "Then I need help. I need help." 3 words that might have moved me 9 months ago. Now they landed with the hollow ring of familiar manipulation. "What kind of help?" "The Miller Industries contract. They terminated it yesterday." Tom Miller said they weren't satisfied with the campaign results and that they decided to go with a different firm. I felt no satisfaction at the news, only the cold recognition of inevitable consequences. I'm sorry to hear that, Mom, please. I know things ended badly between us, but I'm drowning here. Without the Miller contract, I can't make payroll. I can't cover the office rent. Need what, Wendy? I need you to call Tom Miller to explain that there was a misunderstanding, that we're still working together, that you're still involved in the business. The audacity of it took my breath away. After everything, the betrayal, the humiliation, the systematic erasure of my contributions, she wanted me to lie to save her from the consequences of her own choices. Why would I do that? Because I'm your daughter. Her voice cracked slightly. Because family helps family. I thought of the resignation letter handed to me at our anniversary party. I thought of her introducing herself as the sole founder to clients who knew better. I thought of Brian whispering poison about my arrest while she nodded along. Wendy, when you asked me to step down from Jenkins and Associates, what did you say about family then? That was different. That was business. And this isn't another long pause. Mom, I made mistakes. I know that now, but I can't undo them. I can only try to fix things going forward. How are you planning to fix things? I want to offer you a position, a partnership, 60/40th split. With you handling client relations and me managing the creative side. I almost laughed. Almost. 60/40ths in whose favor? Well, I mean, it is still my company, but you'd have significant input in all major decisions. Your company, the one built with my money, my contacts, and my expertise. Mom, don't be like this. I'm trying to make this right. No, Wendy, you're trying to make this profitable for yourself. I heard her take a shaky breath. Fine, 50/50ths then, equal partners, like we should have been from the beginning. Yes, exactly like that. I looked across our office at Marjorie, who was on a call with the director of a women's shelter we've been working with. She caught my eye and smiled, holding up a thumbs up. Another successful campaign launch. Another organization that would be able to tell their story more effectively. Wendy, I have a question for you. Do you know what I'm doing now? I know. I assumed you were retired or maybe doing some freelance consulting. I'm running a marketing firm, Patterson Jenkins Social Impact Marketing. We specialize in nonprofit and social enterprise communications. We launched 6 months ago, and we're already operating at capacity. The silence on the other end was deafening. You started a competing business. I started my own business, just like you wanted to do. But that's using everything I taught you. That's stealing my stuff. The word came out harder than I'd intended. Don't you dare accuse me of stealing anything. I built my new firm with my own money, my own contacts, and my own expertise. The same expertise you decided was obsolete and embarrassing. This isn't fair. You're using your reputation to compete against me. My reputation that I built over 30 years, that you tried to erase so you could claim it as your own. I could hear her crying now. The same tears that had gotten her out of trouble as a child. But I felt nothing. No maternal instinct to comfort. No desire to fix her problems. No guilt about her pain. Wendy, do you remember what you said to me at our last meeting? You said you needed to succeed at something on your own. Yes, but then succeed. Build your own client base, develop your own expertise, create your own reputation. Do exactly what you told me you wanted to do. I can't. I don't have the connections, the experience. Then get them the same way I did 30 years ago, through hard work, ethical business practices, and genuine value creation. Mom, please, I'm going to lose everything. Maybe you will. And maybe that's exactly what needs to happen. The words hung in the air, like a final judgment. I could hear Wendy's breathing become ragged. I could picture her sitting in whatever was left of the office space she'd thought would make her successful. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I'm not doing anything to you, Wendy. I'm simply declining to rescue you from the consequences of your own choices. What am I supposed to tell Brian? He invested his savings in this business because he believed in me. Tell him the truth, that you built a business on someone else's foundation, and when that foundation was removed, everything collapsed. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. For the first time in our relationship, I'm refusing to enable your delusions. Marjorie had finished her call and was pretending to read emails, while obviously listening to my side of the conversation. Her presence was a reminder of what healthy professional relationships looked like, built on mutual respect, shared investment, and honest communication. Mom, Wendy's voice was barely a whisper now. What if I publicly acknowledged what really happened? What if I told people the truth about who really built Jenkins and Associates? What truth would that be? That you were the real founder. That I was your partner, not the other way around. That I made a mistake asking you to step down. I considered this for a moment. And then what? You think Tom Miller would come back? You think Mrs. Palmer would trust you with her business after learning you lied about your credentials? I don't know. Maybe if you recommended me. Why would I recommend someone who has proven herself to be dishonest and unreliable? The question seemed to break something in her. Because I'm your daughter, she whispered. Because you love me. And there it was, the assumption that had underlain every request, every expectation, every betrayal, that my love for her obligated me to sacrifice my own dignity, my own success, my own truth. Wendy, I do love you. I will always love you, but I will not sacrifice my integrity to enable your mistakes. So that's it. You're just going to let me fail. I'm going to let you face the consequences of your choices, just like any other adult. After I hung up, Marjorie approached my desk with 2 cups of coffee. Everything okay? She asked gently. Yes, I said, surprised to realize it was true. Everything is exactly as it should be. 3 weeks later, I received an email from Tom Miller. Jenkins and Associates had officially dissolved, and Wendy had declared bankruptcy. He wanted to know if Patterson Jenkins would be interested in taking over their corporate social responsibility communications. I forwarded the email to Marjorie with a note. What do you think? We'd need to hire 2 additional staff members, but it would fund our expansion into corporate consulting. Her response came back within minutes. Let's do it. If we're going to grow, we might as well grow with clients who value our expertise. That evening, I drove past the building that had housed Jenkins and Associates. The office windows were dark, a for-lease sign already posted in the front window. I felt no satisfaction, no vindication, only the quiet certainty that comes from refusing to compromise your own worth to prop up someone else's illusions. My phone buzzed with a text from Marjorie. Final numbers are in. Best quarter yet. Dinner. To celebrate. I smiled and typed back, absolutely. Partners should celebrate their successes together. As I drove toward the restaurant, I thought about the woman I had been a year ago. Diminished, dismissed, reduced to a supporting role in her own life story. That woman was gone now, replaced by someone who understood that love, without boundaries, is not love at all, but enablement. Someone who had learned that the greatest gift you can give another person is the opportunity to face the truth about themselves. Wendy would either learn from her failures, or she wouldn't, but either way, she would learn without my participation in her delusions. I had finally become the author of my own story, and this story had a very satisfying ending. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.